Honestly, let me try. Shit, I should have started 1080p, whatever. My halls first. And so here. What's this? Wait. This bullshit off me. Like a property. Go. Was I going to play the Towards Strength, Weighted Wins 2024 to 25 research?
Come on, I know they're annoying. You want to get the good stuff, but the more you subscribe, the faster we get to it.
There you go. There we go. So, but today, basically, I'm just going to interview Dan about this research summary because he was one of the primary authors of it. And we'll be
one
shorter and tighter than usual. But
I did not want you. I wanted the little one.
Dan, tell me the story of this project and how it came together.
Two.
And we'll see about the time. It's an interesting story. This project was actually more than my stupid. It started out. I sort of proposed it. It popped in my head as a good piece of content.
I feel like I should bait them. Oh god.
I thought
Famous last words. I haven't.
Was it 4? This doesn't count. Whatever.
I don't think I
Should do Beast Crest. That would be a lot funnier.
putting the proposal together for it.
Is the point is to damage tank?
I had a proposal.
So yeah, so I was like, oh well, it's 10 studies. How much can it cost? And
I feel like I should get 2 silks for the hitting the little one.
we started realized that it was I had some other priorities in the contracts that was helpful.
I should do Beast Crest because it's gonna. I'm gonna die for sure.
And it just sort of like the scope was just kind of increasing, and we were like,
Come on. Really?
program during the election, the elections on it was I looked at that it was over 20% of our
Okay, what about this? Really?
procedures astrologist without and this was a huge report basically. So I probably most people would listen to our podcast and see what we have anything.
Like that. That was nice.
Exciting. You can go look at their sort of condensing it very, very rarely. No, go ahead.
I need to learn how to jump over that one.
Handful of other ones too. Like that exists in, there's probably about 5 other organizations who did something kind of similar from their own perspective and area of expertise.
Good.
Anyway, please go ahead. Right?
This one, I think it's fair to say exactly what this one.
I think my biggest lesson is like not
As far as
or making sure I use the call line.
You mean deciding to win, but you say this one, and not ours, but the deciding to win. Yeah.
right. So they so it was, and this is this is a week before the election. About I just like I
just learned like the other day these are coded to not attack at the same time,
don't put out
which is very nice.
People don't go down
Okay,
to
we're good.
elections. Like
That was just one, but I feel like we're probably okay.
after the election. First of all, it's more data to like.
Probably should
like
turn this off while practicing. So I can do Witch Crest, or I could do Beast Crest. I feel like that would be funnier because of the neutral pogos. I'm not sure I'm at like top shape or whatever. The neutral Beast Crest pogos would be very funny. Yeah, we'll just do it like normal. Oh god. Just a freaking timer. Interact. Close enough. Should really compare this to Undercrest just to see how much of it is like neutral pogo and not having that option. Might turn the music off too.
Especially in the fact where the folks.
All of our learning. Hello, friends, and thank you for joining us on Charting the Way Forward, where we deliver research-informed strategy and intelligence from across the Democratic coalition. This podcast is produced by Way to Win. I'm your host, Terry Elevelle, and today I am joined by...
I guess Way to Win is like a think tank for campaigns.
All right, and I just want to say welcome, everyone. I mean, this is our first pod of the year. And due to scheduling conflict, I know, yes, we're back. Kind of. It's in a smaller...
Should do Beast Pogo.
Or, no, we just, because of scheduling conflicts this week, and we're all like getting back in the grind and all that stuff, we're doing a kind of short and sweet pod today, a discussion about Way to Win's end of year.
Come on now. Get back over here. Oh my god. Okay. Fuck you. Please.
Let's see, the New Republic covered it in an exclusive, and you also now find it on our Substack called Charting the Way Forward as well. So you should subscribe to that, and while you're subscribing to that, you should subscribe to the pod. If you haven't subscribed to the pod, we have a lot of listeners who drink us in regularly, but Dan, they're not subscribed.
We get to it.
There you go. There we go. So, but today, basically, I'm just going to interview Dan about this.
Oh, I should have turned my language to Korean. Yeah.
Because he was one of the primary authors of it. And it'll be probably a little bit shorter and tighter than usual. But let's see if we can get into this a little bit. Dan, tell me the story of this project and how it came together.
And we'll see about the time. It's an interesting story. This project was actually born of my stupidity. It started out, I sort of proposed it popped in my head as a good piece of content. I thought it'd be...
Sure, we did.
Famous last words. I remember thinking, I have a great idea for a book. I don't think I thought it would be easy, but I did think getting the proposal together for it would be relatively easy. 1 year later, I had a proposal.
So I was like, oh well, it's 10 studies. How much could it cost? And I thought we would just list and like throw a little. But we started on this and realized that it was a much larger project.
I like this because they directly fight against the Democrats got too woke.
And
Reasoning.
started to focus on it. I sort of drafted the 5 signals and the sort of 3 big takeaways that came out of it. And it just sort of like the scope of it just kind of kept increasing. And we were like making lots of ads, like doing programs during the election, and we're focused on the election, so we can put it off to the after that. Well, I looked it back up. It was October 27th. Our fellow Democratic family,
That's one.
and strategist, put out a huge report called "Deciding to Win," and this was
Oh my god, I
a
forget
huge
the
report
ceiling.
based on that. Summarizing, I'm probably most of the people who are listening to our podcast have seen it.
Late.
It's called "Deciding to Win." It's easily Googleable. I think it's decidingtowin.org. You can go look at their sort of argument. Condensed it very, very rarely. Go ahead. Yeah.
I should say that there
I was like, let's to go with my last.
like that exists in, there's probably about roughly 5 other organizations who did something kind of similar from their own perspective and area of expertise anyway. But anyway, please go ahead.
This last one.
I think it's
It's gonna reset.
This will make the biggest splash. This
Witch Crest logo.
it generated.
I don't even know if that gets a fight.
You mean deciding to win. You say this one.
Right, that one.
Not ours, but the deciding to win one. Yeah.
Right. So they so it was, and this is a week before the election, and they put out a report about how Democrats.
It was like a minute and a half.
So I've talented them to do that. I've relayed this to them too, and on social media, that don't put out reports about why people don't vote for Dems during election season, please. Just please don't do that. We time everything to be after the election. First of all, it's more data to find out how things go, and especially in the fact where the results were so positive for Dems. If Dems were too far left before, but then they just cleaned up, what's going on there, right?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, also, we don't agree with the conclusion.
I'll describe this.
Sure.
I think I skipped it this time.
Yeah.
We'll get there, but right. So the focus of this report is, and again, I'm they're gonna maybe listen to this and take issue with this, but the general argument, the way the argument gets summarized, is that Dems are underperforming sort of chronically because they're perceived as too far left. And we realized in the process of having committed to my folly of doing this research report already and starting down this path, and I'm starting to try to look at all these studies that we've done as as an aggregate, that
So one,
we had a very different conclusion. That's not what we found. Right?
2,
Mainly when we went and talked to people, the way that we sort of broke it
3.
out, there were sort of these 3 sort of backdrop kind of sort of observations about what's been happening, and then 5 signals that really came directly out of the research. But
It's not as disgusting as all the.
this is
Oh my god.
the main thing. The sort of backdrop was that it had to do with
All the comments
really
made it seem.
frustrated about the economy, and it was not as simple as being mad about prices, but that was a lot of it. They really wanted change, and this is one of the actual signals out of there. But then all this was happening in this context of massive right-wing media advantage, and right-wing, not just
I wonder if I can set up a fan while she's screaming, or while she's doing the
that was
Okay.
YouTubes were a huge area of advantage. And then there was this last piece that was movement alignment, looking back over historical election results, when more lefty voters are on board with the campaign, or is one of my favorites was on the hype train, right? It was in 2020 there was a hype train. 2024 there was not so much hype train.
Get it ready to be set up.
When those things are aligned, it just Dems tend to do better, right? And it's not that there's a huge group of on the hype train, right? It was in 2020 there was a hype train.
She's still cooking it?
Not
No?
much hype train. That was a lot of it. They really wanted to change, and which as an aggregate, that we had a very good conclusion. That's not what we found, right? Mainly when we went and talked to people, the way that we sort of broke it out was there were sort of these 3 sort of backdrop kind of sort of
3
observations about what's been happening, and then there were 5 signals that really came directly out of the research. But
Really?
when this is the main thing, the sort of backdrop was that it had to do with people really frustrated about the economy, and that was not as simple as being mad about prices.
Get on the frustration, sure.
They really wanted to change, and this is one of the actual signals out of there. But then all this was happening in this context of massive right-wing media advantage and like right-wing, not just well documented advantage on social media and in long form. That was, podcasts and long YouTubes were a huge area of advantage for that. And then there was this last piece that was like movement alignment. And looking back over historical election results, when more lefty voters are on board with the campaign, or as one of my favorites for this group said, well, on the hype train, right? He was like, in 2020 there was a hype train. 2024, it's not so much of a hype train. When those things are aligned, it just Dems tend to do better, right? And it's not that there's like a huge group of like leftier voters that can be deactivated necessarily, or that need to be appealed to and need to be appealed.
I wonder if it was a later patch thing.
It's a lot more complicated.
Been hit by that.
I mean, we've talked on this podcast at length before about this sort of treaty land view of the electorate and how there are groups of.
So, economic frustration, media control by right wing. And then the third was
this context of
movement alignment,
massive right wing media advantage, and like right wing, not just their well documented advantage on social media and in long form. Clearly, that was podcasts and long YouTubes were a huge area of advantage for that. And then there was this last piece that was like movement alignment. And looking back over historical election results, when more lefty voters are on board with the campaign, or as one of my favorites for this said, well, on the hype train, right? It was like, in 2020 there was a hype train. In 2024 there was not so much of a hype train. When those things are aligned, it just Dems tend to do better, right? And it's not that there's like a huge group of like leftier voters that can be activated or deactivated necessarily, or that need to be appealed to and need to be appeased. It's a lot more complicated than that. I mean, there are.
I feel like that's a big one. The movement alignment, because disingenuous nature is kind of one of the biggest things that party is messing up. But it's like in 2024, you had Bill McKibben being interviewed like on NPR about Biden, the campaign, and like Inflation Reduction Act, and he like only praised it. He like wasn't willing to give real criticism. But if you take 10 seconds to look it up online, there was plenty of criticism from environmental groups, like the investment in like natural gas infrastructure, I think some oil infrastructure, liquid natural gas, I think export terminals, which I'm not sure if he changed his mind or if it was okay in the IRA, but there's a lot of real criticisms that they were too afraid to bring up because I guess it would sound negative, so they just avoided talking about them at all. And it just, like, the party's already gonna kind of feel disingenuous because they're, historically like super controlling with the message and, trying to make sure everything's poll tested. And I think we all kind of agree on that so far. It's not like a radical thing to say. The Democratic Party has got some messaging issues and doesn't feel genuine. But they, when the movement folks, it's like 3 now. When the movement folks themselves are also like giving off those vibes, it's kind of not a good situation. I feel it's like, who can you trust, and why aren't they giving it to us straight? But basically, no one ever made the case that like, oh yes, this is like not perfect, but we're still going to vote this way because what we can achieve under this is a lot better than what we can do under a Trump administration. They basically never gave like the platform, uplifted those sort of critiques and concerns that much. I feel like there was a little bit here and there, but stuff like not having a Palestinian speaker at the DNC was a huge one. I think they removed them like last second or something. Like they had one that was ready, that was approved and everything. Movement alignment was just so out of whack. And yeah, like all the advertisements, the official ones were very, I'm a Republican and I'm voting Harris. Like, I think one of the issues also was those sort of ads were running like in talk radio or whatever. Those sort of ads were running on college campuses. I remember hearing about one that was basically back to back to back. of that like same ad. Oh my god. Oh my god. It's not good. Okay. Close enough. The fool. I like giving that guy a little bit of love. Very cool. I don't know how to do the extra jump up there.
We talked on this podcast at length before about the sort of 3D land view of the electorate and how there are groups of voters that come into and out of it. So a swing right in the two-way mode might just mean the left your voters stay home, right? And there's a lot of that. That's exactly what happened. But just generally in the media environment, if
Like
you don't
three?
have people who are excited about your
Fuck,
candidacy,
wait.
who are out there making the case, the people who are the more engaged people, that one person in the friend group who is the political one, right? If that person is like, yeah, I guess Kamala, I don't know,
4?
or says something like, I want to vote for Kamala, but I'm, not sure she's going to deliver change, and I'm not sure that, about her position on Gaza, that is drag on your campaign, and it's that does hurt you. It's not as
Different with them both.
well the issue of the salience or whatever, but it's not a linear thing. It's much more of a sort of how voters think and kind of persuasion thing. So so against these three things, against like the sort of real economic frustrations and the media
Nice.
advantage and the movement alignment, that was
Should have been a spear there.
drop over your things.
It's like 4.
The 5 things that we really found, and we really tried to like, I mean, this is a lot of, we were lucky that we got to work with these amazing research people. We worked with like Molly Murphy at Impact, Luke Martin there at Impact Research, was a super well trusted firm inside, in Congress. People use them all the time.
Can we talk?
Celinda Lake, who was an icon.
Fucking hit us in the beginning.
And actually just works with Republicans too. She's not entirely just a Democratic bullshit, but a lot of like cross-partisan stuff. So, those were some of the people. We also did like a little poll, just like we used Pollfish, which is a sort of self-serve poll. Like it was like you got to work with a lot of really interesting and fun tools and people. And the other sort of
probably should have explained
a lot of their studies.
So I emptied a whole bottle of, what is it, like Miralax or something, into a 64-ounce thing of juice, sports drink, which is like a prep thing for colonoscopy. Oh my god. And I don't know, it's like a very set routine where you take it and everything, and I basically waited to take it while I'm playing. Try and rush myself. I do my best at a hit this run. Oh, I'm surprised. Got it. Okay. That should have been it. That should have been it. Part 2. Good lord.
Sort of relied on this was we work with Swaylo. We work with an online testing platform that does randomized control trials. We don't use that as a sort of like the
I forgot to get a
beginning and end of our process for deciding what we need to talk about, what the issues are. But like we definitely get. There's no better way, we still think, to sort of figure out how to
3 left
towards the position by making a good response. 37 ad. So we did a couple of those too last cycle. But out of all of those, these 5 signals that we came up with were voters, and I'm just going to run through these quickly, and maybe we can talk about more. But voters really want to change. And this is like this. Let me run through them really quick first. They really want to change. The message just didn't land. Democrats are.
Can you just go 1? They really want to change.
1, they really want to change.
Yeah.
2, they did not find the message part. We saw this again.
Specifically, the economic message. Democrats' economic message. Yeah.
And I'll get into more of these. 3, Democrats are not doomed. There's lots of barriers to Democrats. Cynicism is the biggest one. Lingering right-wing beliefs about like government is bad for the economy, that kind of thing. lots of things still out there that are big issues. And then the fifth one is that, you know, we really believe that looking at this, all of this through an ideological lens, we saw this time and time again. You know, just voters, like, they have this perception of left and right a little bit, but if you dig down into it, you know, there's the Congress famous 1964 study of this, that all this goes back to. Voters do not generally have a stable understanding of ideology, especially at the issue level. If you ask them to identify what's a more left issue, what's a more right issue, it just gets real messy real fast. And it's not that they're dumb; they're just like we found again and again talking about. I'm always amazed actually when we do focus groups, like how smart people are. Like they're just like they understand their own lives really well. They understand what the campaigns are telling them, but they don't have like just having like an ideological construct is for online people and political scientists, right? There's like, you know, and there are a lot of people online, but even a lot of people online, you see a left versus right.
People are messy.
Like, backward.
We did a lot of qualitative, and you never heard, you and I, since we did, you know, we not only listened to those focus groups, but then put them into, you know, turn them into podcast form. And you just never hear anybody say, well, I just wish that Democrats weren't as progressive or as liberal, or,
yeah,
that, you know, or even,
right.
You know, sometimes what I heard people say was, I think that turned off some people, like they played pundit, you know what I mean? But and rarely did they even, you know, on some of the more hot button issues, like, you know, that we got pilloried on, like trans issues and immigration, did you hear someone that we, you know, in qualitative say, well, I just wish that they were much more conservative on, you know, immigration or something like that. You know, I mean, but it just doesn't, it doesn't play like that in their mind, to your point. So
yeah. I just want to add like show notes here. Carrie helped with all this stuff too, right? So this is a good discussion because like Carrie was in there like helping us sort all this stuff out. You know, small team, right? And you know what we found in doing this research is like we all get different things out of it. The more of us listen to a focus group, and we have like a group chat going. Like, well, we're the focus group. We get different things out of people. It's too many people paying attention to it makes it really hard. But just having the right about, we have a really good research team. Stuff because
thank you.
Right.
All right, yeah. I'm just throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks.
So yeah, the ideology thing it's just like it's just you can't put too much stock in it. I just want to add one more thing about the report. So it's got these signals. It's got a bunch of detail about these signals. So stuff about the media environment, stuff about what voters believe, and then it goes into the 10 studies that they're all linked in here. There's a lot of detail. There's a lot of charts, and like if I'd had even more time, I would have taken each chart and like used it to illustrate a story, which I didn't know people. I thought they did a great job of that. I was actually inspired by that. They really took the data and used it to illustrate them. So we kind of threw a lot of this stuff together. There's all the data's in there if people really want to dig and go, you know, listening to all back issues of our podcast is actually a way to kind of summary the data without having to dig into all of it. But there's two things in here in the appendix that I thought were sort of interesting. We dug into some sort of long-term, the AMES, the American National Electoral Survey, is a sort of data about the
definition of Witch Crest.
Maybe not that. We looked at moderates and you know where you know what the composition of students are self-identified moderates. There's you know all.
Got like 3 left. Alright, wake up, let me get this. Of course. Oh my god, that was so much faster than normal. Let me go.
A lot of research on sort of how moderates think of themselves. They work on this amazing study on this, where it's like what gets coded as moderate oftentimes in these things as well. The person is very extreme and a very extreme view on income inequality, and they just sort of get pushed together, right? So that becomes a moderate, right? So I think rich people should, you know, have all their money taken from them. Oh, that person's a moderate. Right. It's like what public service.
Wow.
But for people who just on a self-ID question of moderate,
way too close.
There's 1.5 times as many of them in the Democratic Party as the growing. So that's the very counter to this. You know, there was one little data point. Actually, it was the data point David Short started with this deck was that moderns are leaving the party significantly along. But there's a little blip that over the past couple of years. But really, what's mainly been happening is that people are sort of depolarizing both parties, and particularly for the Democrats, a lot of people are registering as independents and not registering as Dems, even though they lean down. And that there's been very little structural discussion at all in the party, and to the degree that like moderation and a seeming moderate being focused on constantly staying moderate, constantly staying right wing. A lot of cases makes that process harder of 18 to 25-year-olds knowing what the party is for, or even younger than 16 or 17-year-olds knowing what the party is for.
That's 4 now on the thing.
That hasn't. Those trade-offs haven't been explored at all, really. In the long time. So that's
just for our listeners who David Shore. I mean, a lot of our listeners will know, and some of them won't. Is the principal of Blue Rose, right? And they're the pollster that did almost all of the informing of Future Forward, which was the biggest pound for pound, dollar for dollar PAC by far, working on behalf of Kamala Harris's campaign. So I just wanted to contextualize that for some people in case it kind of slips through. Anyway.
So the other thing that's in there is, and that's actually one of the questions.
Oh my God, it's
just like, who are all these people? Who are we talking about? So it's helpful to. At some point, I think we'll talk about that. And I just want to again sort of reiterate, we can start out this way. Like these are people inside the Democratic family. You think they're operating, right? But we all go to sometimes we go to each other's meetings, get on each other's calls, and have this discussion. It's a big discussion. We're really like when people say the Democratic family don't sign Rosenberg's term. I love it because it's like a family. So it's like your family.
And Thanksgiving.
There's probably a lot you guys disagree about, and that's how we are too. So
yeah.
So the other thing that's in this premise was
back to 5, I think.
It's a thread that I had a while ago about how voters understand and make decisions about politics, and it kind of took off a little bit. It's like good for me. And I was like, okay, I should break this out. But I feel like this is sort of what our friends in the broader knowledge
should put on the wording bill, whatever.
Right? It's like how
we don't get it.
There's this sort of linear approach that they have with voters. They talk about raising the science, this that issue, right? And in our experience, and in my experience, not just doing research and working on persuasion and working on these on all this sort of high level stuff, but in my experience, going back to being an organizer, knocking on doors, I'm not going to say how many decades ago, that some number of decades one. On WO in Santa Barbara, when I first started out, is it's not that people don't look at all the issues from Canada and decide based on linear algebra,
very vibe
issues they're closer to. That's just not how it works. It's vibes, it's narrative. So much of it is around narrative. It's what is the story he's getting at, right? Trump's story in the cycle was I'm going to change things. I'm going to mess up the system, right? And Harris's was, I see you want the system to change, but what would I change? I don't know.
I'm not sure about that. That
was the ad that we heard back. It was so much more. The transport fit into that same narrative.
It did.
Right? It was that that has priorities wrong. It wasn't. This is we've said this a bunch of times. Kerry has been super strong about this too. It's not that now we've seen this since it was Virginia results. It's not that people all of a sudden became anti-trans, right? It's just
or anti-queer, anti-LGBT.
No, or any of that. There has been a little bit.
Oh my God, I feel like I used to be able to get that. I just ate up the dash, honestly. That was stupid. Interesting. I've never been cornered like that before. How long was this death? 29. Beast Pogo. It's a whole other front. Yeah, we should just do practice run. You can do anything but like a 2-minute death, honestly. That's the big issue. Come on. Come on. Keep it. Now you're on the ground for some reason. I never ended that. Let's go 2 minutes. Let's go see what our wall spot. Oh my. I see why splits are helpful now if I keep on. Let me open an old video to check and compare. I should go through like Helver. Oh. Okay. It's a corpse. Here.
Push around the edges, which is bad because only one side is going, right? And like ultimately, who's making these arguments? Like voting believe all kinds of stuff, right? Like you go ask a voter about. There's a story out. You know what? I'm gonna skip. There was a story.
Say, this is.
Okay,
I'm worried about where this is.
Conversation.
We're cutting this, Dan. We're cutting this story.
Oh, there was a conversation that I had with a voter, who was a family member of a good friend. I'm not going to get into the details, but it was. You will hear all. If you just go talk to someone about it, you will hear all sorts of issues about it. That you will have someone go from some variant of great replacement theory to, well, I just think we should make, you know, the, like legal pathways easier. Like, you know, and like.
Yes.
That's how people's brains work, you know? Like, there's a ton of research on this. Like, that's just it. So,
Where could be all bosses?
For the other side, you run an ad on Shared Ground where you spent $7 million saying,
Nice.
I'm voting for the most conservative, this is the most conservative immigration bill in decades. You are saying, your opponents are right. You are strengthening those beliefs in your strength. Like, their actual neuroscience. I have a degree in neuroscience. I have friends who do. They read, like, talk to Anand. She's the person who explains this better than I do, right? You're strengthening actual physical patterns of neurons. Neurons are very, very like.
I mean, you can make us 3 of those politics.
Right. Like that is, you have to start with that. And like, it's the same lesson from research and from neuroscience as it is from stone and knocking on doors. People, right? This is all important. But like that is so important. It's so important.
I should have gotten a few. We can do it up here.
By running ads like that.
I should have done it up there.
what Republicans are saying, that whole thing. But you're also letting them define what the terms of the debate are. And Democrats let Republicans define down the terms of the debate to be around the southern border, and that's it. And immigration is a huge issue. And it was like the Democrats just stopped talking about anything but the southern border, pathway to citizenship, just fell out. And all these other, H-1B visas, and any number of issues. But yeah, and so you're doing two things at once.
Sure. No, and one of the things that we actually have data from our ads for 2024. That as soon as I finish it up, we're going to have another post on this where I went back and looked at. We've been making Suelos, where there's like all the different ads across horse race or mobilization, or all the different questions that we asked, or with different demographic groups. So we never got around to posting these last year. Now that we're thinking about what to talk about in 2026, it's a little more relevant. So we're going to post that soon. The number one ad that we had was actually immigration, kind of by a lot, with a bunch of different groups and across the rich voters, general population, and with white working class. Was like it was just a pure sort of social.
6 or 7.
We talked about this on the podcast before. It was called Playbook.
I'm pretty sure we played Playbook at one point.
Maybe we did.
I do. I mean, I don't want to tell you which episode, but
yeah, it's and maybe we'll drop it in here. I don't know. I think we played it before. It's going to be in this blog post because we wanted to write it inside the framework of what the Democratic Harris approach to immigration was. He wasn't making a policy decision. It was saying, look, we're not going to do deportations. We're not going to spend gazillions of dollars on what ended up happening. What's happening now? What so many people are opposed to it, right? Like it was so from a policy-wise perspective, it was the same thing like the Democrats in terms of immigration reform, but it was just a very different argument, and it was an attack for saying crazy things about immigration that. And look what happened. So it's frustrating to watch all this now, and different choices made during 2024 campaign would have made this much harder. And this is ultimately why, sometimes I get why people are frustrated with these discussions about like Democratic strategy going back and forth. Like there's like, how big is the audience for this really? But like these questions really won't matter. It's the and like it's really this is what.
Before we let people get too frustrated, there were some hopeful notes in this thing. Can we hit some of what was most hopeful to you about coming out of writing this research summary?
I mean, I think that the opposition.
Should have hit him with the spear first. Not sure if that hit. It was very weird with that music. Nope. Oh my god, he fucking got scooped up. That's one. Hug. Oh my god, that was close. That should be it. No bells? Nice. Well, let's see where we were at last time. 39. We woke up at like 38, 30. $37, we woke up in D. Yeah, we're late. We'll make it up through last step, skip 2.
That we've tracked to this kind of immigration reform even though it wasn't on the top line, you know, there was like all through last year, like mass deportation was at like 52 or like 55, right? And
Support. You're talking about support.
Right.
Yeah.
And for sure, some of that is because there was literally no counter argument going back and forth. Like there's like, how big is the audience for this really? You know, but like these questions really don't matter. It's the and like you know, it's really this is
before we let people get too frustrated, there were some hopeful notes in this thing. Can we hit some of the? I mean, what was most hopeful to you about coming out of writing this research somewhere?
I mean, I think that the opposition that we've tracked to this kind of immigration reform, even though it wasn't on the top line, you know, there was like all through last year, like mass deportation was at like 52 or like 55, right? And
support. You're talking about support,
right? Yeah. And for sure, some of that is because there was literally no counter argument happening at a high level from anyone, right? Schumer and Jeffries, we have made this decision that they can't talk about immigration, right? Like we're trying to shift that. We're trying so hard to shift that. And I think like even with that on the baseline now, I think if you dug into that, and if you looked at the support outside of the half-ish fewer today, but even last year, half of Republican for MAGA, I usually use that, so bounces around, but maybe
One up on
I think that
East Coast Pogo
wasn't at 52% in that group of voters, right? So it's an issue that but even having it at 52, I get it's not ideal, right? Like 52% of Americans.
I could do it all at one Boston's okay.
That number now is it's you have the data that you know the polling for abolish ICE, which is sort of the hardest version of that, right? It's
yeah, right.
20 to like 40, like
yeah.
You know,
it's gone up. A support for abolishing ICE, which still isn't above water according to Civics polling, but it's gone up like 23 points over the past year. And the other thing is that just the implementation, which we were on the front end of realizing that there was starting to be a big separation.
4 months ago, wow, never mind.
Support for Trump's policies on immigration versus how they were being implemented. I mean, I think the problem is that once you saw them being implemented, you realized how horrific the policy actually was. But that was going downhill and was working against Trump in a situation, you know, in the aftermath of, and I don't even think we've seen the definitive polling on this yet, in the aftermath of this tragic killing of a 35-year-old mother in Minneapolis.
It's our get the balls out before we
But we don't have anything definitive in the aftermath, but we already do know based on, you know, YouGov polling released this week, the support for ICE is not just about abolishing ICE, I'm just talking about support for ICE. I think they're underwater now, and they've gone. They're not underwater with, but they're definitely underwater with independents, and they're underwater with Democrats by a lot. And support for them overall has gone down 20 to 30%.
Unnecessary.
And there's the core of really intense opposition to it, which you know we talked about with sort of with movement alignment, that people out there making those arguments, people showing up in the streets, people doing all this. The indivisible folks got 10,000 or something, and that's like in the.
Does it mean shit?
Wow. There's a lot of everyone. I know that. Okay, getting back to vote. Like this is weird to say this, but I think the fact that the message just didn't land in 2024 is sort of weirdly hopeful. And there was a narrative moment that I sort of uncovered. And it was actually one of the studies that we did was team comments where we get the database of all the ads from home ad impact because of the marketing was provided. We were customers there, so they'll give us the whole database at the end, and then we a bunch of make those reports from it. And it was as I was writing about for that, but I realized there was this moment of almost Shakespeare-like drama that happened in the campaign that like I think is like the illustrative of this actually. The New York Times Siena poll that had the change number that we kind of started the signals with, even though it was like was still such a poor signal and so forth. And we heard this over and over. So but this was the best quantitative version. Was the percentage of Americans who want to change was 96 to 2, 2%.
96 to 2.
96. Everybody else 2% were true. 2% were true. 96
in 2024.
Over 8.
Yeah, right.
In that poll, parents also had a narrow lead on which candidate is we think is more. That same day, October 8th.
It's like the only place I can do that without free.
They asked her what would you change from what Biden. That was the day that she gave the answer. She said, or I forget what it.
People want change. She said, I'm not sure about what action change for. I wouldn't change a thing. Actually,
that's a couple to make. Took the Trump with people a couple weeks to see it in their data or whatever to like realize that was huge misstep that they would have. A lot of people like that was that in terms of actually serving those not interested people keeping staying home or persuading people to front like that, I've seen that the most intentional of anything. Just
I'm reading about this one.
more damage. You know, like I said earlier, the trans ads sort of fit into that narrative, but it was but that was the end that people they brought on and mentioned, right? And it's like for people who think paid media doesn't have any effect on that.
BS2, here we come.
Well,
Either say the words of an ad like almost verbatim, or like they'll bring up the topic, right? Because it isn't. We think ads are a good proxy for what against wrong there.
well, in the they them ad, Harris was also saying things in her own words. So quoting her, I think, made it doubly effective in a way.
Yeah.
I know you're gonna push back on that, but like,
Oh god, we did it.
you know, people ended up telling us in our research that they thought she was out of touch with what, you know, this was the most important part of the trans ads, and what came out of that was that they believed she was out of touch and didn't understand what was most important to them. She was too focused on other stuff. One of them being trans issues.
Sure, and not push back on that, but it's just amazing.
Sorry, bro.
That use of a candidate's voice in an ad can backfire so easily. The Clinton had a big strategy. I mentioned there was data on this. When I was just getting involved in that.
Should skip this.
Back in 1950.
In 2017, and this came out. Wait, sorry, what you saying?
It said back in 1950.
I don't know. When I was studying at the film office. When no, so in 2017, when I was like looking, I was like, I got
Okay.
data in 2016 or way before that,
Oh gosh.
and then got that involved and started to do this stuff. And like the interviewer was like, "Oh God, I'm so sorry. Like it was really racist stuff. But I'm sorry that we did warn you at least that was coming." And the woman was like sniffling.
They said they showed some like racist language in an ad. They're bringing drugs, rapists, whatever. It's a woman that was married to an undocumented man, and they were like worried that they were like offended her, or like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't let you give you a heads up." And what the woman said was, she's like, "Oh, but they're right." I'm like, that's very telling. Like, you can't, especially against the idea that, oh, if you date someone of color, that makes you not racist. They're like, basically, I had black friends, whatever. I don't get why people haven't disassociated those two, like romantic, other. Wanting to sleep with someone is like, doesn't mean you're inherently incapable of seeing them in a lesser light because of their skin color. Fuck me. Close. Should have been it. Okay. I guess this run is dead. Time for beast. Neutral beast Bogo. I'm curious what the time is though. No. We're 41 would be at this point. 49. This is 1 minute behind. Didn't I die at the oh my god. My death was like in hell room or something. Okay. Maybe the not eating thing's getting to me. Okay.
Like she says, it's not that it was racist. It's like it's right. So like when you put things in an ad, like you got to be careful about what you're saying because it's like it's like be persuasive to people. In this case, obviously, it worked inside the smoking context. When it's just that there's that usage of people's voice that really reflected. And that's it. Just it's so well.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, the part, the one that was really deadly was the one that had the clip of you know, and I just had to shout and call because he just kind of going after a response to it, but that was a cool laugh.
You have to just
Sorry, the background, right? One of the trans ad had an interview or had a clip of an interview with Sean God because of the
Breakfast Club.
So the Breakfast Club was a huge, super well listened to, huge audience podcast. Basically, where big with black people, it's a lots of people all races listen to it. It's like this guy. I think it's a very diverse audience. It's super compelling. It's excellent. Like it's super well. It's great and funny. Sorry.
But he made the case that
he was like, yeah, I don't. It was kind of a throwaway comment, right? Like I think if somebody had sat down like personnel with them, people are like, well, you know, should this election really hinge on like the specifics of healthcare versus system policy? You know, like health policy, I mean, probably not. Like, yeah. But it's just like that. That's what like media is so good at is deflecting the whole conversation about whatever issue they want. You know, this straight line from that to this week where they, you know, were able to get Tim Ross to step down because of this fraud thing. It's allegations that go on. You know, like there's stories complicated way, but it's government kind of doing what it's supposed to do. It's like there was fraud. They thought it was like ended for the false fault. But right, media was able to deflect this whole story and create this funhouse pair effect where it's like all that stuff. They're really good at it. That's why we're here.
Wait, let's get back. I don't want to miss this hopeful note though. The signal 3 was that Democrats are far from doomed, and I'm very. I mean, yes, I am an optimistic person by nature. It is true, but you know, the voters are very frustrated. But that unpopularity of Trump following his actions in 2025 has at least temporarily arrested the realignment of people, the theoretical realignment of mainly young voters and voters of color and men of color specifically towards Republicans. It's like, well, you know, people were very frustrated and Democrats were in charge. And guess what? They're at least as frustrated, more frustrated now. And it turns out Republicans are.
Actually,
so can you just talk a little bit more about, you know, Democrats being far from doomed?
Yeah, there was some data today. Hugh, I think, had the Dems plus Dem-leaners versus Republicans. Republicans now was like +8 Democrats, which is like the most people's hearts and identities shift around. Like it's not like this is hard to deal with, right? But like when there's bad things going on and it's Republicans, like it's people shift away from it. There's thermostatic effect too, which is very effective. Like when a party's in power and there's ideas that are associated with them that people feel like are going poorly, like they stick the other direction. Like it's not a huge chunk of the electorate, but it's that middle 15-20%. Like really don't have us favorite parts go back and forth. And you know, some of it is paper thin. It's like, you know, a culture calls an app, they're like, oh yeah, okay. You know, like it's not a deep and hiding, you know.
Second one.
Why we just do that. But like but that's it is better now than it's been, you know. It's not really
Good Lord.
We don't know yet.
Now we're at the word we finished.
But there's more data. This is one of the there's more data.
Depends on how long it takes. Almost good.
Right. what's really right, right? But we can guess, right? Like some of it is, the story that we've been trying to tell is like the rich over my lifetime, over the past 5-ish decades, have taken $79 million. It's small hand, it's not even the top 1%, it's like part of the 1%, taking $79 million from everybody else. Like, that is not why people are frustrated. Right? Like
the
that
height.
inequality of like so many times, like when this is actually another spot of focus. When we went to people, a lot of times you ask them at the beginning, like, how's things going for you? Like, I'm like, well, mixed, right? Like people would be like, oh, I'm doing okay, or like we've been blessed. It's like we're comfortable. We hear that from people a lot. We hear people who are legitimately struggling too. It's fun.
Drop down
And
55 for
in person, people really that's why I think in surveys people are more like, oh no, okay. But in person, they're a little more agreeable about stuff. And like if you look at the macro data, right, it's like spending is up. People are spending a lot of that stuff, right? It's like that's what's going on. But they're looking. No one looks at this economy. No one looks at Elon Musk making $1 trillion and like things said in social media and says this is an okay rate for this to be. Nobody's looking at here in Oakland, like we have such incredible wealth, and then like almost be like there's like like it's just you can't
10
like we're
10 communities, yeah.
for something that disparity.
Interesting.
Like that is like Harry and I are both football fans. That is like when your offensive line is super good and you have a good running back, or your running back doesn't even need to be that good. They have created a new reality. They've created a people right up the middle, right?
That's right.
Right over the left shoulder of the center, right there. And
That's
like,
right. You can give that
whole this party that like how broken things are now.
I mean, give Dan and I a football. We could get that hole. We couldn't make the secondary miss, but we could get through the initial hole.
One of the linebackers is going to come in and knock our head out. That's fine. But like we can at least get 7 yards on this play. That's all we need from the second.
That's right. 4 yards of play, and it's a first down. There you go. So, yeah.
So
sucks up here.
There's it's I think
I will add that we did, and as people who have been tuned into us know, and so at the risk of being a broken record player, but we did probably on the year the most.
Over here. Come on. Oh my god, one. Oh god. Let me try. Nobody's come back. I need to drink some more coffee and get the rest of my prep stuff. Where's this one? There we go. Mhm.